Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Good morning, Glenn. How you doing?
All right, Mike. Doing great. Great. I got
be.
the double cup today. I actually burnt my tongue. So
You burnt your tongue.
yeah, it's gonna be a tough session.
I see a lawsuit somewhere. I don't know if you can.
Totally.
Yeah.
Mike, I'm in a forgiving mode.
Are you in a forgiving mode?
Yeah.
Well, you're making my feelings feel
Good to
better.
see you, man. I always love
It's-
love
yeah.
jumping in and having coffee with
Yeah, it's
you.
good to be here. It's good to be at Audio Hive too.
Audio Hive is awesome. Brian,
That's right.
Brian rocks.
Yeah, he's our what do we call it again? I always forget that. It's the coffee maker guy. What is
Barista.
it called? Barista. Yeah.
He's the podrista.
Is that even
No.
an American word, or is that like
What,
French?
podrista? No.
Podrista?
No, but we just made it one.
Yeah.
No, we were just chatting a little bit that when we were talking about doing a Sober.Coffee podcast, we were doing our shopping and that lasted about 6 minutes. And we're like, let's go find a professional. So
Yeah.
very grateful to Brian's very responsive at Audio Hive, and he rocks.
Yeah, it's nice to see it come together. Somebody just recently asked, "How did this whole thing start?" And it's Glenn was inspired to try and help the next struggling alcoholic. With some messages of experience, strength, and hope. And we thought no better way to do it than out in Podcastville.
Yeah, it's cool. I have an anonymous Twitter account focused on sobriety. And I was amazed at people out there, folks out there that are struggling, that are looking for solutions, and yet they're scared to death to go inside the rooms.
Right, right.
And, I actually connected with a couple folks, and there was one guy in particular, I worked with him for months, and then he finally, got up the courage to walk inside, an AA meeting. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because one of his things is, he's like, yeah, but Glenn, what if like I live in a small town? What if somebody recognizes me?
Right,
and
sure.
What if somebody in the meeting realizes that I have a drinking problem? And I'm like, well, you realize that they have one too,
Yeah,
which is
right,
why they're in
right.
the meeting. And it's funny, he had never processed it that way.
Right.
So I think, that's why I originally sat down with you on Sober.Coffee is, hey, there's a lot of stuff we talk about in the rooms, a lot of stuff we talk about with our coffees.
Right.
And hey, there might be somebody out there, who can relate,
Right.
who can use the information and it could help them today.
Right, and we live in a new world. I mean, Zoom. Before March 2020, Zoom was something that happened when I hit the accelerator gas pedal in my car. I zoomed. Now it's a verb. We'll zoom later. And I think it's important to embrace the next technology. And if we've got people out in the world that are again looking for that message of experience, strength, and hope, I think it's part of the 12th step, as we talked about. It's part of the 12th step to carry
Share
that
the message. Yep.
Yeah,
Share the message.
absolutely.
And we've had 22 million downloads. So
we're just shy of 22 million. We're about 22 million shy of 22 million.
Or is it 22 downloads? I'm not sure which one.
Either
it's
way.
22 something.
It's 22 something. So yeah. So this morning, I think we talked. You were sharing with me that you hooked up for a coffee with somebody else, you cheater, and talked about feelings, and you thought it was a pretty good topic for us to talk about. So I'm interested to hear what insight they brought to the discussion.
Yeah, it's so yeah, I did have coffee with somebody else. Sorry,
Sure.
I did cheat on you. But it sucked. So no, I'm just kidding.
The coffee sucked, or
Yeah, coffee sucked.
Okay.
So feelings. It was part of a meeting. Also, this woman shared, that she's working with family members and the family members meetings, and they had with a big family event they just had, and and then she started sharing about how the family members' feelings, and it just clicked for me. A couple thoughts about feelings. So I just thought we chat about here. One is, and probably to kick it off, I remember seeing a Facebook post, and you know about Facebook posts, right?
Oh, yeah.
They are factual.
Oh, you know it. Yes.
I mean, they are like words from God, and if you see it on Facebook, it's true. And the post said, and it was just like like a parking sign, one of those road signs. It just said, "Your thoughts and feelings are valid. Act on them." I'm like,
that's a green light to disaster, I think.
Oh my gosh, like I did that my whole life.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
In fact, the opposite works. So it really started thinking, your thoughts and feelings are valid. Act on them. Worst advice I probably have ever seen. Because if that was true, I wouldn't be sitting here having, chatting, with coffee. I'd be in a bottle of booze somewhere.
Sure.
I'd be acting out again.
Right.
I'd be disappeared again. I'd be in which hospital is Glenn in this time, right? So, a couple things. Probably the first place that I really connected with feelings is, in my 4-month rehab program, my counselor gave me this little exercise to do, and he gave me a white chair, and he put me outside in a beautiful blue sky, with a couple clouds, and it was just gorgeous, afternoon. And he said, "I want you to sit here for 3 hours. No cell phones, nothing to read, just, me, the thoughts." And it was one of the most painful experiences I have ever gone through. I can still remember today. It still kind of gives me like sweats. And, that was like probably the first time I recognized and named, head trash. And I felt so many things, and I didn't know what to do with them. And we had some time processing that afterwards, but man, that was like a real eye opener for me about feelings and typically as I look back, when I had feelings, I didn't like how I felt, so I used external, means of escaping those feelings. And booze was primarily one of them. Shopping was certainly one of them. Media was certainly one of them. Accolades and workaholism was certainly one of them too. But just a way to really recognize feelings. And what I learned through the process is that feelings aren't facts. Feelings are just, hey, if I feel a hot stove, yeah, that's probably a fact, right? But as far as emotional feelings, I'm aware of them today, but they don't drive my life. My program drives my life. My passion and purpose to do the next right thing, that drives my life. And there are times when I know factually that I'm doing the next right thing, but yet I don't feel it.
Right.
There's times when I go to a meeting, I don't feel like going, but I know it's the right thing for me to do. And there's this guy, that I know that we know, Dr. John, and he used this phrase that I really latch onto, and that's suffer better, right? So as I look back to that white plastic chair, man, I was mental suffering. And that's how I define it. Maybe, somebody else would look at it and say, man, that's fairy tale land. You were fine. But in my own mind, I was suffering. And so, one of the things that I have learned is how to suffer better, is how to get through situations like that, whether it's 3 hours in a chair. And I'd be curious to see how that would go for me today. I think I might try that. And I think it would go much better. I know it would. But I've learned to suffer better and get through that. And I'm very aware, hey, I'm going through a time that I don't feel, I don't feel good. I don't feel into it, but I'm going to, persevere and I'm going to get through it. And then that leads into the old first wheel story, which, we'll have to drop that, where, because I know that we've talked about the first wheel a lot, where, there's times I'm on the bottom of my first wheel, and, when I'm at the bottom, I'm smelling the fumes, I'm looking at the trash, and I feel like crap. But what I have over time is I have enough proof that Ferris wheel is going to move.
Right.
And then I'm not at the bottom for very long. I'm not sitting in that white chair for very long, you know.
And I think, Glenn, I think you hit on it for me, and that's a great message because you certainly hit a chord with some experience that I had in my journey as well. But the one thing that jumped out at me as I was listening to you this morning is time, and reality changes as time goes on, right? Because I have more experience, I have more knowledge.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, right. And so my experience when I came into the program with emotions was so raw because I didn't know how to differentiate fear from anger from joy. Really, I didn't know what I was feeling because for decades I masked those feelings with, I numbed the feelings. So I really wasn't maturing from an emotional standpoint from the time I was 13 years old, and so I had to start from benchmark 14 years old. Even though my body was 60, I was 14 emotionally, and I had to start there, and I had to learn those. And the other thing that jumped out at me is just living. You learn to live with the pain. You know, there's a saying out in the world, in the real world, that says, "Pain, time heals all pain." I think that's the biggest line of crap in the world. I don't think it heals it. But what I think, like I have tinnitus, right? And so there's a ringing in my ear. And when it first came, it was overwhelming. It affected everything about my life. Well, I still have the same level of tinnitus in my ear, but I've learned to live with it. Mm-hmm. And I don't respond by trying to drink it away, eat it away, vitamin it away. It's just I accept it for what it is. And as you pointed out, another of my favorite sayings from our friend Dr. John is, what do you do about it? What do you do about the feeling? You just act yourself rightly to right feeling. All right. So you start by acting as if, and then you let your feelings kind of catch up with it. That was his advice to me, and I hang on that as well.
Yeah. I love that, Mike. And that's one of the things, when this one was talking, I kind of jumped in and I said, hey, the best way to change feelings, you have to act your way
right
to better feelings.
Right.
Then, I was talking to my wife, and, she's using these words, and I'm not even sure, what they mean, right? Like she used the word happy, and she goes, hey, are you happy? And I'm like, well, define happy, for me, right? I said, I don't know, and that's, I know what wet is, right? Mm-hmm. I know mathematically what certain numbers mean, right? But feelings are so subjective.
Sure, they're.
And so I told her, I said, hey, I'm not even sure if I can define, happy, and so I just kind of rolled out, a bunch of these subjective words, that represent feelings. And, hey, I have found that my best living is done when I consciously, cognitively know, and there are probably two words that I probably shouldn't use because they're over my head, but, where I know that what I'm doing is right, and I'm okay with that, irregardless of how I feel.
So when I'm working with guys, Glenn, that are new to the program, how am I coaching them as it relates to feelings? How am I coaching them? I mean, how do feelings affect sobriety? For the new guy, how do feelings affect sobriety for the old timer? For the person who's got some, those are the questions that I ask myself. How would you coach them through their feelings at the early stage of their sobriety?
So this is not my quote, and I guess in some ways I'm still getting my arms around it, but I hear it a lot, and it's, Glenn, this is not a feel-good program. It's a get-better program, right? And hey, do I love to feel good? Absolutely. But what I've noticed factually for me is, if I make decisions based on feelings, I get myself in trouble. I just do. And so it's not a feel-good program, but yet I feel better than I did.
Right.
I mean,
So the suggestion is understand your feelings, if I'm hearing you right. Understand your feelings, but act through them in your quest to get better. I'm trying to get it into a succinct sentence that would make sense for the newcomer.
Yeah, I went through a situation yesterday, and it was a crazy situation, and today I have tools, right? So instead of just trying to process the feelings myself, and say, hey, this doesn't feel right, because that's kind of still an alarm goes off. I'm very aware, but I picked up the phone and called my sponsor. Mm-hmm. I'm like, dude, here's what's going on, and of course, every time I call him, it's about somebody else, and his popular answer is, Glenn, that's none of your business.
Right.
I hate it when he does that. I'm like, I should learn by now, but he's like, hey, that's none of your business. Are you doing the right thing?
Right.
And I said, actually, I am. I just don't like how it feels. He goes, so what? Mm-hmm. So, what? Suffer better is great. I'm not sure if that's good to tell a newcomer because they're really used to suffering.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that's a real popular one. Telling somebody, hey, this is not a feel-good program, mm-hmm. that's kind of negative too, I think. Mm-hmm. But I think the right answer is, hey, especially as your brain comes off booze and your body comes off booze and your brain's trying to figure out how to fire again without booze, and and for me that took quite a while. In fact, I think it's still in motion. But it's like, hey, you know what? You're not going to feel great every day. You probably won't feel worse, mm-hmm. right? So that's probably a good place to start. Mm-hmm. But recovery takes time.
Right, time.
And as we talk about the promises, as we talk about different things in this program, I love the words, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. For me, it's never quick for me. I'm always on the slow train. And it's just a matter of, hey, just, keep going at it. It eventually gets better,
And we're going to talk a lot about that. I think we've talked a lot about it in the episodes to coffee sessions that we've had, and I think we're going to talk about it a lot more. I mean, life on this side of the trade is so much better off than it was on the other side of the trade. I had feelings on both sides of sobriety, mm-hmm. Pre-sober, post-sober, and but now understanding them, dealing with them, I think what I've heard this morning is you're going to have them. They might not feel right. They might not feel good, but they're necessary. It's necessary to understand them, process them, embrace them, and move forward and just get better. And that's the promise that I can make to the next struggling alcoholic, is that life does get better. It does get better. It might not get it's not all rainbows and unicorns and lollipops but it's better. It's just better, and not just the simple stuff like not getting a DUI. I mean, I'm talking about life. I'm talking about living life.
Yeah, it's funny is at least today I'm being more honest about my feelings.
That's right.
For 50 years, hey Glenn, how are you? Ah, man, I'm doing great. Super fantastic.
Right.
Super bum would be fantastic, as my daughter says. Right. And now I'm able to say, Mike, man, I'm having a crap day, man. Things just aren't lining up, today. And, one of the things I just wanted to underline is that we do the next right thing regardless of how we feel.
Right.
And then, one of the things I was talking with this girl, I guess we can wrap up with this one, kind of a last underline is she was trying to control other people's feelings.
Oh, right. Oh.
And I'm like, that's a whole nother world, man. If you can't control your own feelings, how in the world are you going to control somebody else's feelings?
That's right.
That's just impossible. And I think that's a good lesson for us too, is we focus on us. Mm-hmm. We focus on doing the next right thing for us, and then let things happen around us and be okay with that.
That's right. I love it, Glenn. It's been a good session.
Feelings,
I hope it helped. There's a lot of resources online too. You can YouTube, managing emotions. You can YouTube, understanding yourself, and so invest in yourself, I guess, is what I'm telling myself this morning. Invest in understanding those feelings and emotions.
Yeah, certainly a lot of resources on feelings, and I even think there's like a Frank Sinatra song about feelings.
Go ahead.
Something.
You want to close this with that?
No,
okay, all right.
Really
We're
don't,
gonna
but I think it's out there. Let's close out with some U2.
Yeah, there you go. Hit it.
Thanks, brother.
Hit it, Bri.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago. Beautiful city.